stay on for just a little time and then we get off the air, which mornings we stay on in what we call wall-to-wall coverage, meaning we get on the air when a warning starts and we don't get off the air until the warning is over. We do that for tornado warnings and obviously hurricane warnings, that sort of thing. So, just kind of coming up with that sort of a plan. And at most stations, the chief does the evening newscasts, but, there are some markets where, someone's been there for a really long time. They have that chief sort of status, but then maybe they want to work mornings instead because they want to have their afternoons free, that sort of thing. But most of the stations, generally speaking, it's the chief does the evening newscast.
All right, yeah, I think that was a pretty good overview of the what the chief does. Let's go ahead and go to the member questions that were submitted. If the members are here, we'll actually let them ask themselves. Otherwise, we'll just read them. Looks like Zach's not in, correct? He had a technical issue.
Yeah, he's watching on the Facebook Live though, but I have his question. This Zach wants to know, what responsibilities do you have besides purely communicating the weather conditions / forecast to the public? And do you create your own forecasts or report them from another organization or source?
I come up with my own. I look at a lot of different sources and try to develop patterns and trends. For instance, certain models, do better during certain times of the year than others in terms of chance for rain, chance for storms, temperatures, that sort of thing. So, that's just one of those things that kind of comes with time, and with forecasting, you get a better feel over the course of time. Oh yeah, I remember this model always tends to skew a few degrees too warm or a few degrees too cold, that sort of thing. So I take a lot of different sources and put together my own forecast, and then I'll just kind of tweak them. For the most part, I go off of like what the National Weather Service is forecasting is kind of a base. And then I will tweak it from there. We do have within the WSI system, there's something called ICAST. They have their own model at the weather company. Some forecasters like to use it, especially in the morning, because that will automatically just populate all the temperatures and the rain chances and that sort of thing. I have a tendency to want to go in and alter those. I don't find that they're terribly accurate. I guess it really just depends on what part of the country that you're in. So in a hurry, you can turn on all the ICAST data and it will just spit everything out. So it's very convenient, especially if you work mornings, right? And you're trying to get that extra 10 minutes worth of sleep before you have to be in to work at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, all, TV ready and everything like that. A lot of morning folks, I think, use that, but I'll use that. I'll look at that too, and I'll kind of use that as a gauge. And that is one of the questions that we get asked a lot is, why do different broadcast meteorologists sometimes have different temperatures that are being forecast? One person might have 94 degrees as the high tomorrow. One person might have 93. Someone else is 92. One person's calling for a 50% chance for rain. The other has a 40% chance. And I think it's because most of us kind of look at all those different sources. We do our own extrapolating to kind of come up with what we think is going to be, the most accurate forecast for the day. But we're never going to be all, completely spot on. I mean, it is a science, sure, meteorology is a science, but there is an art to it as well. And just knowing, the different models and having a gut feeling. Some of it sometimes just comes down to gut. You've been tracking the temperatures for a while and you keep watching maybe what's coming out of the National Weather Service. And, your gut's just telling you, yeah, I don't know. I don't really like that because of this or that sort of thing. What I have found to be difficult about forecasting in South Florida, not difficult, it just kind of adds an extra layer, is the fact that our viewing area is actually covered by 2 different warning offices. So although Palm Beach County with West Palm Beach is where the majority of people in our viewing area live, that is covered by the Miami office. The Melbourne office covers all of the other counties, which spatially that takes up a much bigger portion of our viewing audience, but maybe not population wise. So I'm constantly having to check the 2 sources, both chat rooms, obviously, to make sure I've got the watches and the warnings all covered from both of those. And I've never had to do that before. I've never lived in a city that didn't actually have the National Weather Service office directly in that city either. So sometimes I feel like if there's, a big event going on in Miami, but there's still some storms up in West Palm, like we kind of not necessarily get forgotten about, but it's just easier to focus on for the National Weather Service, I think, to focus on that Miami area because obviously the population's so big. Every once in a while, I'll call the National Weather Service and I'll say, hey, do you guys think you're going to be issuing a storm warning, for this one cell over West Palm? And then within a short time, sometimes they will. It's almost like they're very focused. And it's easy to get tunnel vision sometimes, I think, when you are a meteorologist just focusing on that one area. Obviously, you want to notify the area where you have the greatest population, but you can't forget about the outskirts as well. Like today, we had that tornado over Belle Glade, and it's easy to say, well, low population there. It's kind of over a field. Not that many people are being impacted, but I tell you what, if you're living right there where that tornado is happening and you're seeing it and you're scared and you're nervous about what's going on, I mean, it feels like the world's biggest deal. So you have to just kind of be cognizant of that. So we're constantly balancing both the Melbourne office and the Miami office and what they are forecasting. Sometimes there's a little bit of overlap. And it really is quite interesting just to see how the two different offices react when we have severe weather that moves through both the areas, where the one leaves off and the other one picks up kind of thing. I've never had that challenge before for forecasting, having to watch the two different offices that carefully. So it's kind of interesting, to do that and try to establish relationships with both. When I first got here, I called both offices and I talked to, the meteorologists there to try to introduce myself so that, when we're in the heart of a severe weather event, they weren't completely thrown off. Like, who's this person, calling me, trying to get some information on the media line. So that has been a big challenge for me here too.
All right, so that was very good information. So our next question comes from Kelly. I don't know if her mic is working, but we will try. Kelly, if your mic works, try your question or I'll ask it.
All right. Hopefully, I don't know. I've been told that I'm very quiet, but okay.
It's
I'm getting
working.
thumbs up, so it sounds good. So my
I hear you.
question is kind of more in regards to like if you can remember in job transition or from school to entering the workforce, do you have any advice or like anything you didn't expect or just like advice for us as students?
I don't think, and I have a stepson who's probably kind of about your age, maybe he's 23 now. And, I find in conversations with him, it seems to me like he might not always feel completely ready, to go out into the world. Like, yeah, I just graduated from college and that's great. And I've got this education and I've got this wonderful degree, but is that really going to be enough to make that transition? I found with myself, there was kind of always that fear, sort of that hesitation, like, can I really cut it in the real world, kind of thing. And just know that you can, even though it's probably not going to feel like it. And, maybe not at first, but you're a smart person, right? Whatever you don't know, you're going to pick up very quickly and you're going to be able to figure it out. And, just be nice to people because you never know what they're going through at the time. When I was doing reporting, I would go out into the field and have to work with people all the time. And, sometimes you get some negative feedback from viewers. That is a tough thing too. You just never know what people are going through. You never know what the thoughts are in their head. And say, for instance, you go into broadcast meteorology. Maybe you hear a negative comment from a viewer. Just keep in mind that there are generally 10 more people who are thinking something positive versus that one negative. You hear a negative comment and just like it sticks in your head so much. And you can get like 10 positive ones, but for some reason you don't ever remember those. You always remember the bad ones and just try to focus on the good, right? Because you're never going to make everybody happy. And that's the plight of a meteorologist. And I've learned this the hard way, right? Going on the air and saying, oh, thank goodness we're getting some rain today, because maybe we've been in a drought for, several months. We've got a red flag warning and we need the rain to kind of quell those concerns. But as soon as I say that, then people will say, oh, if you like the rain, move back to Chicago where it rains a whole lot more, so your version of what is good, even though it might make sense from a scientific standpoint, might not be what the garden variety person wants. So, you're never going to make everybody happy. And it doesn't matter if you stick to doing weather or if you become do something else entirely. You just can't always please everybody. And I was always a people pleaser. And you kind of got to throw that out the window. As long as you're making yourself happy and your boss is still relatively happy with you, you're going to stay employed. The one thing I realized about working in television is that although I was completely prepared for the on-air presentation part of doing weather, I didn't have any of the graphics building experience. I didn't have the science experience. Going back to school, I got the science part of it, but I still wasn't very good at building graphics. So I just spent a little extra time kind of doing that. That was the one part of it I probably wasn't prepared for, but with repetition, things get easier. You get better at it and you can do it faster. And so just keep that in mind. There are going to be some parts of the real world that at a job that you're heading into that you may have zero experience on. Just rely on the people around you, ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask for help. And they'll show you something, and then just practice it, and it'll get easier. Did that answer your question? Okay.
Oh, yes,
All right.
thank you. That's a great answer. Thank you.
I like your backdrop, by the way.
Thanks.
All right, so our next question is coming from Angelo. So Angelo, take it away if your mic works.
Wait, can you hear me?
Uh-huh.
Okay, cool. So my question is, I know it's kind of like a more bland question, but I just kind of wanted to ask you, like, with everything that you do with the broadcasting and everything, like, what's like what's your favorite part of like everything of like the whole process?
For me, it's the presentation of it. I like telling that weather story. I like building the graphics and I like doing the forecasting, but when it all kind of comes together, and I've managed to do it in the exact 2.5 minutes that I've been given for weather, and I really feel like I got the message across to people in a succinct way without, stammering too much. That feels good. That feels like, you've completed a really big project. And when I leave work at the end of the night, I've almost always, developed something new, or I've learned something. I always try to learn something, whether it's maybe just something new with the graphics. And I point over here because that's where I have my computer. Maybe it's just one little thing that I've picked up that I didn't know the day before. And I try to focus on that and just keep thinking, okay, every day I'm building upon the foundation that I've been building for 23 years in the industry. I'm still building and I'm still learning. And I like feeling satisfied after a weathercast. There are going to be those where you're kind of like, oh man, that didn't go as well as I had hoped. I kind of got a little tripped up here, or this happened, or that happened, or I lost my train of thought. When you're on the air live, you've got a hot microphone, you've got a hot camera on, and not everybody is always spot on. Maybe I didn't get much sleep the night before, I had to get up early or something for a doctor's appointment, or just off, or there are distractions going on in the studio around me, people running in and out and stuff like that. So I guess when I feel like I've really done a great job forecasting wise, graphics wise, presenting wise with the weather for the day, I walk out of work feeling pretty good. And that's the best part.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and we have a last minute question. Anna, if you want to ask your question, go for it.
Okay, so my question is maybe a little personal, so like go into as little or as much depth as you want.
Okay.
As a female broadcaster, what does your getting camera ready process look like?
Well, the first thing is that I am doing it all myself. You know, I think a lot of times people believe that there's somebody else who does your hair and your makeup and picks out your clothes and stuff like that. And sure, maybe if you're like at the Weather Channel or your Katie Couric level, or, you know, not at this level, right? So it is hard because that's not something I'm good at. But you know, you work with it. We have consultants sometimes who will come in and say, hey, wear this color, this looks great, or don't wear this color. Or I like that cut of a dress on you, I don't like that. You know, I have just learned little tricks of the trade over the course of time, and you take advice from other people who have come before you, and they'll say, yeah, you don't want to really wear, you know, frosty type eyeshadow or something like that, because it does something funny with the under the lights, you know, in the studio and things like that. So I just take advice from other people, and I'm not great at it, quite frankly, but if I sometimes hear complaints from viewers, and that's one of the toughest things. I don't mind people criticizing my forecasting ability, because that's what I'm doing. That is my job. But when people say, yeah, you need to tell that person who did your makeup today that your lipstick doesn't really match your dress right, or your eyeshadow looks a little bit heavy on this side and doesn't really match up, you need to tell that person to fix your makeup. I'll say, well, you know what, you just did, because I am the person who does my makeup. So thank you. And yes, I'm not, you know, really skilled in that realm, but I'm doing the best that I can. It's really hard to take those personal type comments. And when you're in the public eye, you're going to hear everything. I mean, I have heard that I am too everything, too fat, too thin, too tall, too short. You know, my hair is too long, my hair is too short, my hair is too blonde, my hair is too dark, my makeup's too dark, my makeup's too light. My nails are too long, my nails are too short. My hemline's too long, my hemline's too short. You know, you hear it all, and you just kind of have to figure out something in the middle that works the best for everybody and is as least offensive. But we get help with that, you know, and if you were to go into broadcast meteorology, you'd get help with that too. They have people who come in and kind of try to guide us in that realm, because that's not really what any of us went to school for. That's for sure.
Now I'm not frazzled anymore. My computer just crashed. It just completely crashed, and I was like, oh gosh. Okay. I actually did have a question, since we have a few more minutes. What kind of software do you use to make like your graphics? Like, do you have like pre-made software, like, or graphics? Do you make your own? Like, what
I'll
do
try
you
to show you. I know it's not going to be the world's greatest shot here, but this is. We use WSI, and I've used everything from Weather Central and WSI now live together. They married one another. And I've used AccuWeather. This station that I'm at, CBS 12, we use this system, WSI. So we can work on, this is it in show mode, basically. So when you go on the air, obviously there's no warnings that pop up here, but we build all of these graphics individually, and then we plop them into the order that we want. We call them hits, and then we go on air with it. It's kind of like a rundown for a producer, but more of just a graphic form. And so this is just our storm track radar. I was zooming in earlier on that area where we had that brush fire, but this is the system that we use. For instance, if we want to edit one particular scene, we open it up in the scene builder, and then you can, I don't know if you can really even see this, but we have different layers of the graphics. You can have, you know, different plots, whether it's temperature, you can put different contour layers on here, different city names, that sort of thing, different imagery. And then you can set keyframes if you want. Like, this is the one camera shot that I have. Say I want to zoom in to South Florida. You can set a separate, you know, camera frame for that. You can tilt it. You can basically really tailor make the graphics to what you want them to be. And then with each one of those, you save it and then you put it into your show. But this is the WSI system. So I have like a future radar in there. You can set different points where you pause it. Probably can't see that all together that well. I realize it looks really blue. But this was the future radar for tonight, and then you can go and adjust the timing of it. And then I had the Storm Prediction Center, marginal risk for severe weather. So these are all the different graphics that we build, and most stations will have kind of a set basic graphics look, right? I mean, every station has its own, like we want to use this color red and this color blue and this kind of a look. And we incorporate that. My dog's down here coughing, sorry. We incorporate that into the overall look. You know, every station has their graphics look that they like. Maybe they want certain colors to be used more often than others, certain cameras, shots that they want used more than others, that sort of thing. And so we have full reign over building all of those graphics ourselves. But that's really what I spend the majority of my time on once I get in the building. I spend maybe about an hour doing the forecasting before I even get into work. And then I probably spend an hour to 2 hours building graphics for the 5 to 6:30 newscast. And then I'll still use some of them, kind of like recycle them for the 11 o'clock, but I try to make new graphics for the 11. So if anybody watched earlier in the evening, they're not seeing the same exact things. Obviously, some of the graphics I'll still use, like for instance, with this being Memorial Day weekend, I'll probably use the weekend forecast graphic still, but some of the others I'll try to change them and update them, maybe looking farther ahead to the weekend now that most of the storms are over for the week. Does that answer your question about what system we use and the graphics? And
Yeah, it does.
okay. And truthfully, I wish I had gone to school and taken more classes in computer design and graphics building. I never took any of that when I was in school. And you know, you got to keep in mind, when I was in college, we didn't even have computers. I mean, computers were out, obviously, but it wasn't where everybody had a personal computer. I mean, I had to go down to the basement of my dormitory to use a computer lab if I needed to type up anything, put something on a floppy disk, you know. So I didn't grow up in the realm of building, you know, fancy graphics and stuff like that, using any sort of, you know, like Photoshop or anything like that. So for me, that's been a big challenge, trying to build the graphics and really do it in a nice way and get it done fast. Because when you work in the television industry, you are a slave to the clock, right? I have a whole list of things right here, and I don't even know, I got it all scratched out. But I have a list of things that I have to do by a certain time every single day. And I'm constantly going back and referencing this. You know, I have to record early fringe topicals with our creative services. I have to do the 3:30 radio that has to be posted between 3:30 and 6:30. I have to do a late afternoon engaged video post through Social News Desk through WSI. I have to get the newspaper forecast done by 5 p.m. because that's their print deadline. I have to make sure I'm changing all of the logos on our 7-day forecasts, because depending upon what newscast we're in, we have a different sponsor. So we manually have to go in and make sure we change that. And trust me, they're watching. So we like to make our advertisers happy. We want to make sure we get that right. Several, you know, social media posts at certain times of the day. We also have to go online after a newscast and actually edit our weathercast from something we call Storyline onto our website. So when people are going to our website onto the weather page, they're seeing the most recent weathercast. And that, you know, is an editing process as well. And then that's just before the 90 starts, or, you know, before the 11 o'clock, I should say, starts. And then we have a whole list of other things that we do as well. So I always have to be cognizant of what time it is. That's always a big deal. You have to use your time efficiently to make sure you're on the air when the 5 o'clock hour comes around, the 6 o'clock hour, the 11 o'clock hour, and you have to also be cognizant of how much time you're using when you're on the air, right? So we have an IFB that we hear time cues from the producers. They'll give us the time cues to count us down while we're doing weather. So while we're talking, we sometimes have someone talking in our ear as well. Sometimes there'll be some sort of breaking news, or lately, with all of the coronavirus task force meetings and that sort of stuff. Sometimes the governor will speak when we're in the middle of a newscast, sometimes right when I'm in the middle of weather. And I'll have a producer who will say, you have to toss to that right now, or hurry up, and wrap, get out of that, toss back to the anchor so that we can go out to Tallahassee or the White House, that sort of thing. So you're always, always, always looking at the clock, cognizant of the time that you're using. And you have to be able to kind of know at the end what kind of graphics you can maybe cut out and still tell the weather story just as well, but to do it in a little bit less time, because sometimes with weather being the only ad-libbed part of the newscast, aside from banter back and forth with the anchors, it seems like the weather is where they like to make up time. So if they need you to stretch, then all of a sudden they may say right before you go out to do weather live, hey, you need to go 3 minutes as opposed to 2.5. Or, oh, we just had this breaking news that took a minute off the top of the newscast. Can you do weather in 1.5 minutes or 2 minutes versus 2.5? So, you have to be able to adjust kind of on the fly too. So that's one of the things that we're always under, all these like mini deadlines over the course of the day.
All right, can we squeeze one more in?
Here's my dog Murray, by the way.
I was hoping you would bring your dog. I was telling Colin earlier, I'm like, we gotta bring our dog out.
Oh yeah, he was barking. So this is it. It's about dinner time for him. So did we have one more question?
Yeah, we had an audience question.
Hey, it's Danielle. I know it says Librevard, so please forgive the title. I actually had 3 questions, but at least 2 of them you can give me super short answers on. Did you have any internships while you were in school, and do you have any mentors?
Yeah, actually, I interned at WMBD in Peoria, Illinois, but I interned initially in the news department, so as a producer. So I got to produce a newscast there, and then that was pretty much it. We had so many different schools that fed into the Peoria, Illinois television market, that we had so many folks there who were really getting to do, kind of rotating in and out. We'd maybe get to do 1 newscast per day kind of thing as a producer. They used me as an undercover, like kind of reporter one time to help them out with a story. But aside from that, I found that I was just kind of like fetching people's coffee. I wasn't really learning a whole lot. And that was where some of the anxiety started to set in for me, because I thought, okay, this is an internship. This is real life. This is supposed to be my transition between college and the real world. And I don't really feel like I'm getting to learn a whole lot. I'm sitting here in the newsroom and I'm observing the process, but I'm not really digging in and getting to put together a newscast, except, maybe one time. So that's actually when I asked to be moved to a different department that didn't have as many interns, so that I could learn something else about the television industry. And so they didn't know what to do with me, quite frankly, but they put me in the sales department. And so that's how I kind of got into television, by doing sales at first. They had never had an intern in the sales department ever. I guess it wasn't something people were interested in doing, but because of that, they basically trained me for an entry-level position. So when I was finished with my internship at WMBD, they actually offered me a job at that station as a salesperson, going out selling advertising time. I already had my sights set on moving out to Arizona because I wanted the sunshine and the heat and all that sort of stuff. So I applied for sales jobs and news jobs across Arizona and took the first one I was offered, which was the sales job. So that's how I got my foot in the door, although it's not the route that I would recommend you go. If you want to be on air, you want to be a meteorologist, I wouldn't start off in sales. It's just what worked for me in a roundabout way. So as far as your question about mentors, I've had lots of mentors over the course of my life. I have had several people who served as sort of the news director at TV10 that I worked with. Jay Groves was one of them. Rob Pollan was another. And I still keep in contact with Rob. I still see him. He had come out to Tucson several times. I visited with him. He's been out here to West Palm. I visited with him, and still always glean something, you know, when I talk to those folks. As far as for forecasting is concerned, Dan Breeze was a big mentor for me when I was going through the meteorology, because there were parts of it that just got to be very challenging, especially when you're doing it online. I'm someone who learns from an actual human being, a teacher in front of me, a lot better. So I used him. He was an operational meteorologist out of Davis-Monthan Air Force Base in Tucson. And he offered to tutor me. So I would meet with him once a week when I was going through like the last 2 years of the program, and he would help me out. And to this day, I know that I have an open, you know, relationship with him. I could email him, I could call him, I could text him and say, hey, I don't understand this, or can you give me more insight on that kind of thing? And I think as long as you make one or two really good, you know, you have one or two good mentors over the course of your lifetime, that's really all you need, because you can continue to keep the relationship and the conversation going with those folks. And you might even learn a little bit more than just something relating to your career, right? Hopefully you learn something about just you and life in general, dealing with life as a whole.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, so that's been the hour, and we're about to lose it in 7 minutes. I want to switch it to, there we go. I want to switch to gallery mode so I can get a picture too. Okay. All right, everyone, smile. Oh, let me get better. There we go. Smile. All right, got it. Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time and speaking to us. We truly appreciate it. It was very informative and very awesome.
Good. I hope so. I hope so. You guys are a bright group.
You guys
Teacher,
can
you're
talk.
doing a good job.
And if you want to say anything, you can unmute.
Yeah, it just started pouring like right as you guys said that last statement. It just, the skies just opened up right over my house.
Well, you know, you can always share video with us. Just text the word weather to 44332.
I feel like hearing the commercial now in my head. Like when you guys do that, I'm just hearing it in my head now when you said that.
Yep. Well, I mean, it's important, right? We can't, we're seeing it from the perspective of the computers and inside the studio, and everybody else is actually out and about in all the weather. And although we can send out a storm track truck or a photographer or something, you know, we rely on viewers to submit photos to us and video, and everybody has a phone now. So everyone's got, you know, pictures and video at the ready for us. So we rely on our viewers a lot to kind of spot weather for us.
Does anyone want to believe the 3-inch hail report out of Lake Mary?
3-inch hail report.
Supposedly it's train spotter. I'm curious. That's all I'll say.
Well, I guess real quick, if you still are willing to answer one more.
Sure.
Have you felt in today's climate that you had to censor anything like fact-based or, you know, especially with like the comments that came out about the governor today when he said like neglecting fields and geography and things like that? Do you feel like in your position you've had to censor yourself or were encouraged to censor yourself? I guess, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I have never really been encouraged to censor myself. I've just been fortunate enough to work in places where that didn't happen. The one area where I do hear from other meteorologists, like when I go to the AMS conferences and stuff like that, especially the broadcast conference, from a lot of other broadcasters, is sometimes they're encouraged not to talk about climate change that much. That would probably be the one hot topic, no pun intended, that we're either we shy away from it because we feel like we can't really explain it in a way that makes sense in the weather story of the day, or because we just don't want to get flack from viewers because, you know, it's a hot topic. When I've gone out to different organizations and we start talking about climate change, sometimes the conversation gets a little heated very quickly. And, you know, that's certainly not necessarily something that our station would want us to do. I think it's important to have conversations about climate change, but to say something that might spark a big debate, you know, but the flip side is it's good to get people talking, and we obviously want people to interact with us on social media as well. So like when Jeff Biridelli was at the station, he ended up leaving to go study climate change and teach it at Columbia because he felt so strongly about it. And as far as I know, he was never censored, never told not to talk about it, but I don't know that for a fact. But I have heard from other people, you know, who really want to kind of work it in and talk about it more. I know Climate Central comes out with these really great, you know, graphics that are TV ready, and they're specifically made for broadcasting that I will sometimes work into my weathercasts, you know, especially they had one the other day about how over, you know, the last 30 years with warmer temperatures, we have seen more days with excessive rainfall, 2 inches or greater. And it kind of tracks it specifically for your city. You can go in there and select the city that you want. And for West Palm Beach, it had gone up. I think it was like 5 more days per year, something like that, where we have an excessive rainfall sort of an event. And if it's a day where you're either forecasting excessive rainfall for the next day or you had an excessive rainfall event, you can kind of work it in. I've never had anybody tell me, ooh, no, you know, don't do that. But I have heard other meteorologists who are in broadcasting get told, or they tell me that they've been told by managers to kind of zip it when it comes to climate change. I've never experienced that, but I could see where that would be one area where someone would be censored.
Awesome, thank you.
All right, it's gonna end in 2 minutes anyways, so thank you so much again for coming and speaking to us. We truly appreciate it.
Yeah,
You
thank
get the
you.
applause. You're getting the
Thanks,
applause
guys.
from our professors.
Yay, very nice. I appreciate it. I've done a lot of talks before.
You put the split with the applause emoji.
Thank
You got the
you.
applause from our professors. You got the approval.
Yes. You know, I've done a lot of talks before. I've never done one like this through Zoom. So this is a first for me. This is monumental, you guys. This is groundbreaking. So thank you. I appreciate it.
That's awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. And wow, good luck with the weather too. That's interesting for times.
Oh, yes, thank you. It'll be busy now until what, November?
Yeah.
That's when we'll all get a little bit of a break and have an opportunity to do some relaxing, right?
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys. If anybody ever has any questions, Cassie knows how to get a hold of me, my Facebook, my Twitter, my email. Feel free if there was something that maybe I didn't get to today or I didn't answer your question very well, just contact me and I'd be more than happy to talk with you some more about it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you all for coming too. We're good.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.